I don't know. Again, last week we talked about how Christmas, everyone has different feelings when it comes to Christmas. For some, it's lots of joy and fun and all that kind of stuff, family gets-togethers. For others, it can be quite a difficult time of the year, loss or not having that kind of stuff. For me, growing up, Christmas was a great time. A great time. I remember as a kid, the great feeling of waking up and running to the Christmas tree and seeing the presents and opening the presents and all that kind of stuff. And then the family get-togethers were a real fun time. Being an Italian, so family get-togethers were enormous. Half the people I didn't even know. You would go there and food, a massive table of food. There was just stuff that spread out, the olives, all the stinky stuff, salami, that kind of stuff. And then the middle would be a massive plate of spaghetti. And then also there'd be, at one end, enough meat to feed the population of Tasmania. All that stuff. And there'd just be excitement and fun and just the energy in the room. As we talk, I listened to my uncles and my aunties, and it sounded like they're arguing, but actually they were just talking. And generally, it would end in an argument because no Italian's ever been wrong. And then you'd leave, and that was Christmas Day, and it was great. But lots of fun memories as a child, and especially as a parent, children. Am I coming out occasionally? Yeah. We good? Can you hear me? Yeah, excellent. Sometimes my chest hair interferes with the frequency and it causes some problems. We're going to jump into the text. We looked at this text last week, but before we get to the text, can anyone tell me what this picture is? It's a hard picture to know what it is. It's an incredible picture, actually. Yes. Army men, yeah? Yes. World War I, 1914. Anyone was in World War I? No? Anyone know someone? There's probably some people here. Did anyone know someone that went to World War I? Okay, a few people. World War I here. This is an incredible story. The German troops and the Allied troops stopped fighting on when? Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, which is incredible to think that they would stop fighting because of Christmas. And the story goes that they stopped. They sang carols. They apparently even had a game of soccer against each other, ate and celebrated. What would make them, here they are, fighting against each other, shooting guns and bombs and all that kind of stuff. And then for some reason, obviously that reason was Christmas. They thought, you know what, we should not be fighting on this day, that they would come together and stop. And then as soon as Christmas finished, they went back to their sides, and what did they start doing? Started fighting together. It's extraordinary to think that would actually happen, but that's what happened in 1914, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Let's have a look at this passage. We looked at this last week. We know that Mary and Joseph have gone to Bethlehem. There was nowhere for them to stay. Mary has given birth. And then we see again that we read this about the shepherds. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. And the angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them. And they were terrified. And again, the language there, terrified, means they were scared. Scared for their life, as anyone would be if you saw angels. You'd be like, whoa, blown away. But the angel said to them, do not be afraid. How many times? I've mentioned this numerous times. How many times is this mentioned in the Bible? 365 around about. One for every day almost, unless it's a leap year. Okay? But the angel said to them, do not be afraid. What a great reminder. I bring good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Again, we touched on this last week, that Christmas is incredible news. It's good news. It's for every person. Doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, short or tall, Italian, no matter what color your skin is, doesn't matter where you live, it's good news, great joy for all people. It's for everyone. I was reading an article in yesterday's paper. I don't know if you saw in the middle, they had some summaries or some little articles written by the heads of the churches. And Victor from the Baptist Church says, when you hop on an aeroplane, you realize that there's different classes of people, don't you? Some people turn left, and they go to the business class. The majority of people turn right. And life can be like that. But the Christmas story is not like that. The Christmas story doesn't put us into different classes depending on what ticket you have. No, we're all the same, and Jesus is available for everyone. And then goes on and says, today in the town of David, a Saviour has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in clothes and lying in a manger. Jesus doesn't come into a palace, doesn't come into rich, all that kind of stuff, or prestige. No, he's born to a peasant family in a manger where animals are. Suddenly a great company of heavenly hosts appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favour rests. We're going to look at this a little bit later. This is what happens when the angels had left them and gone into heaven. The shepherds said to one another, let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about. So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. So they respond to what they heard from the angels. They go and they see for themselves and they're blown away. When they had seen him, they couldn't hold their excitement. They couldn't contain their excitement. It said they spread the word concerning what they had been told about this child, and all that heard it were amazed that the shepherds had said to them. Then Mary, it says, treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. Imagine what was going on in Mary's mind, thinking. It was incredible, really. Remember, Mary's just a normal human like us. In fact, she's a teenage girl. We can sometimes lose that part of the story. She treasured up these things and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they'd heard and seen, which were just as they'd been told. And so here we have this one little verse, verse 14. It says, glory to God in the highest. This is probably the translation you would remember. And peace on earth to those whom God is pleased. Peace on earth. Peace on earth. When we look at the world, we turn on the TV. We don't even have to really turn on the TV. We know that the world is not at peace, is it? What's quite strange is right now, as we speak, the region that Jesus was born, the Prince of Peace was born, there's not much peace there, is there? There's raging wars around that whole area. We even look at the first illustration, 1914. There hasn't been much peace on earth. The dictionary defines the word peace as an absence of conflict or an absence of war, an absence of fighting. And so when we think of peace, we tend to think of an absence of war, an absence of conflict. And it is. Peace is very much an absence of that conflict. But we're going to see in a second that actually biblical peace is so much more than just an absence of conflict, an absence of fighting. Because when we look at our world, there isn't much peace. They did some research, not British research this time, although British research is very good, apart from the carols. They kind of looked at the last 4,000 years of humanity, of humans. So they didn't go past that because it's hard for them to find any recorded stuff there. But the last 4,000 years, and they could only find 286 of those 4,000 years, 286 of them were warless, as in there was no fighting. There was no conflicts between different nations. Only 200, that's only 8% of the last 4% of the history of humanity, there's been no fighting. They also saw there was nearly 9,000 treaties that had been written up, and all of them had been broken. All of them had been broken. There's no peace on earth, just as we read on this story. Peace on earth for those who God is pleased. There seems to be a tension there. And sometimes when we think about no conflict or peace, we think, oh, that was in the olden days. That was in the Old Testament. There was all this fighting and bloodshed and all that kind of stuff when they weren't civilized. You know, there's been more bloodshed in the 20th century than in any other time in history. The 20th century has been the most murderous in recorded history. More wars, more death, more fighting than the previous thousands, which is interesting, isn't it? And the angels claim that peace came. Peace on earth came some 2,000 years ago. And this is what I want to try to draw a bit of a distinction today. There's peace, which is an absence of conflict, an absence of fighting, which is very much a part of the biblical peace. But the biblical peace is a little bit different. It's this word shalom. Turn to the person next to you and say shalom without spitting on them. Shalom. Now, the concept of shalom, this is really, really important. The concept of shalom is central to the biblical story. Central to the biblical story. The Bible literally begins with shalom. And throughout we see this concept, this aspect of shalom weaving its way through the Bible. In the Old Testament, over 400 references to the term shalom. New Testament becomes a Greek word, but it has the same meaning, the same concept. If you meet a Jewish person today and they will greet you with the word shalom, it means that you would be at peace. But it's not just talking about an absence of conflict. It's actually talking about something much richer than that. It's got this concept of wholeness, completeness. May you be of sound mind and sound health. May you be complete. May you be whole. It signifies a well-being and harmony, both physically, emotionally, and spiritually, within and without. May you have shalom. May you have completeness. May you have harmony, wholeness, soundness, an absence of agitation. You know that feeling of being agitated? I get it every time I wake up. Hear the kids getting ready for school. An absence of that is a wholeness. Shalom is this incredible word. And actually, the best way to look at it here, I've done this little slide. Just picture that as you've done your hair and you've got your best shirt on. And shalom is this, think of it as this wall. This beautiful wall. There's no breaks in the wall, is it? There's no graffiti on it. It is complete. It is whole. And so when that is happening, it is shalom. You're whole, you're complete. But we know that life isn't like that. We know actually there's little bits in life that break away, that chip away. So there's relationship tensions, there's relationship conflict, there's pain in our life, there's financial struggles and pain, and there's racism. There's all this stuff in the world that we live in. And what it's created is life is no longer whole. And so we walk around with brokenness in our life, and there's no wholeness. There's no shalom. And this is where Jesus is actually, he's the bringer of shalom. He's the Prince of Shalom, and we're going to see that in a little bit. Now, the word shalom, if it was a verb, it actually means to restore. So when you're bringing shalom, you're bringing restoration. You're bringing wholeness. So you're rebuilding that. So for the word shalom to be a verb, as in a doing, an action, you're restoring shalom. Does that make sense? So you bring shalom, or shalom in action is this restoring. So Jesus is a bringer of peace. He brings and he restores. He brings shalom. And so throughout the Old Testament, we get this incredible aspect of shalom. But also it's an expression of hope. An expression of hope. Look at this passage here. That's not an expression of hope. Here's an expression of hope. Zechariah says, "Rejoice greatly. Whoa, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious." This was written nearly 700 years before Jesus was even born, 800 years before Jesus was born. Lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. What is that telling us about? What story is that? Not Christmas. Easter. You're like, Anthony, come on, you're a bit early. No, but that's the story of Easter, that Jesus comes the last week of his life. He comes into Jerusalem riding on a donkey. He says, "I'll take away the chariots out for him and the war horses from Jerusalem, and the battle will bow, and the battle bow will be broken." And here it is. This is talking about Jesus. And he will proclaim peace, shalom, to the nations. He will, yes, there's an absence of war, but a concept of wholeness is what he's saying. And then our beautiful passage here that we've been looking at through Advent. "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called," imagine, this is Jesus' resume. Imagine having this on your resume. "Oh, wonderful counselor, mighty God." I think you'd get the job. "Everlasting Father." And then the last one, Prince of Shalom. Jesus is the Prince of Shalom. He's expression of the hope here. Obviously, again, this was 700 years before Jesus was born. This hope. The people of Israel are waiting. Yes, they want the absence of conflict. They want the fighting and the war to stop. But there's also this restoring, this wholeness of what they're waiting for. And so what is this? This Prince of Peace brings wholeness in 4 different areas. The first area is Jesus brings peace with God. Jesus brings a shalom, a wholeness, a restoring between us and God. Let's go back to our diagram again. That's God. God is represented by a triangle. That's because you try to Google a picture of God and it's just really hard, so I went with a triangle. And that's Sculpture Park in Mundaring. No, that is the Garden of Eden. Okay, God creates, the 7 days, whether it's 7 days or not, doesn't really matter. The point is this: God is creator. God creates. God made this and it was good. God made the animals and it was good. God made the night and dark and it was good. It was good, it was good. Now the word good it's not the word shalom, but the word good there is this, it is the same concept. Because it's good, it is what? It is whole. It is complete. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not broken. And then we get to the pointy end of the story. He creates these two people with no hair and no shirts. And literally, they had hair, but they weren't wearing any shirts because they were naked. And it was good. It was that they weren't ashamed. Why? Because there's a wholeness there. There was no sin. There was no shame. They just were. And so this is, in the Garden of Eden, perfect shalom. Can you see that? There's no brokenness. Now, you know the rest of the story. You don't have to see the sequel. But what happens is we turn our back on God. We think we are better than God. We think we can do it. God, I don't need you. In fact, I can be my own God. And that brings in a brokenness. And now we don't have a shalom with God. It's broken. It's not complete. What does shalom mean? Peace. So we don't have peace with God. And the only reason we can have peace with God is because of Christmas. Because Jesus comes and he says, the Prince of Peace, the Prince of Peace, the Prince of Shalom comes and he restores. He brings peace. Now again, you're back on the Easter thing, Anthony. Well, actually, the story of Christmas is actually the story of Easter. Jesus comes because of this. And he comes and he fills that gap. And from brokenness, we move towards wholeness. Is that easy enough to see? Now, this is true for anyone who says yes to Jesus. Anyone who becomes a Christian, they receive shalom. They're made right with God, and positionally, they are whole. Now, as a Christian, doesn't mean we always experience that. Positionally, we are whole, and we have shalom with God. We have peace with God because of the work of Jesus. Look at these verses here. Romans 5:1 says, therefore, since we have been justified, meaning to be declared righteous, to be made right through faith, we have what? Say the word? Peace, which is shalom. We have wholeness with God for our Lord Jesus Christ. Colossians 1:20 says, and through him God reconciled everything to himself. He made peace with everything. This is more than just us, with everything in heaven and on earth by means of Christ's blood in the cross. I don't know if you've ever felt like you've been running from God. Whether you've been in a season where you've run from God. I can remember before I became a Christian, for a period of about 2 years, I felt like I was running from God. I don't like to use this word because it's a weird word to use with God. But I felt like God was haunting me. That's a weird word to use with God, isn't it? But it was like, because I knew me and God were not at peace. And my Christian friends said that, hey, Anthony, you need to be made right with God. You need to have your relationship restored. You need to have shalom with God. And I read about it, and I looked at different things, and I knew in my heart it was real, but I didn't want to say yes to Jesus. And so that's why I talk about the haunting. It's not like God was like, boo. It wasn't like that. But I felt like if I got hit by the proverbial bus, has anyone ever been hit? I'm sure there has been. But if I got hit by a bus, I wasn't going to be with God. I knew that was a tension between me and God. There was no peace. I don't know if you've ever felt like that. Maybe you feel like that now. But because of Christmas, we don't have to wrestle with that. We can have peace. And then obviously I became a Christian, and that peace, I received that peace. The Christians said I would grow to 6'1" if I became a Christian. That didn't happen. They were lying. No. But I received peace. I no longer felt like God was haunting me. I know, again, a weird feeling or weird saying, but that's what it was. Acts 10:36 says, you know the message God sent to the people of Israel announcing the good news. Even the concept of good news has this sense of shalom because it is good news. The arrival, good news of peace through Jesus Christ who is Lord. Ephesians 2:17. And he came and preached peace. That's got the word peace in there twice, and I didn't highlight it. Peace to you who were far away, and peace to those who were near. Jesus brings peace with God. The second area he brings peace is with self. Turn to the person next to you and say, self. Just making sure you're still awake. What do we mean here by self? Self is this inner, that you have peace inside of you. Look at this Stoic writer. He says this: while the emperor may give peace from war on land and sea, he is unable to give peace from passion, grief, and envy. He cannot give peace of heart, for which man yearns more than even outward peace. And basically it's saying that the government can give peace in certain areas, but ultimately he can't give us full peace inside of us. I remember, I may have even been during COVID that I read this little quote. You know, during COVID we were relying on, and not to criticise Scott Morrison and Mark McGowan, we were looking for them to help us, to look after us, and that's okay. But ultimately they can't give us full peace, can they? You know, they can have better policing or healthcare, and nothing wrong with that. But what this guy's saying is actually there's some stuff, in fact a lot of the stuff, the inner stuff which matters, they really can't help with. But Jesus can. He brings peace with God, but he also brings peace with self. Look at this passage here. Again, two pieces in one passage, that is good. Peace, these are the words of Jesus. As he goes to the cross, he says, peace I leave with you. Shalom, wholeness, completeness I leave with you. My peace. Not the peace of the world, not the peace you get from drinking alcohol or doing drugs or the peace you get from your finances or your bank statement. Not that peace. That peace is temporary. And in fact, that peace can be taken away from you like that. He says, peace I leave. The peace I leave with you is my peace, my shalom. I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled. And do not be afraid, because I'm giving you this shalom. I'm giving you this peace. There was a painting competition. I heard about this great little story. And the theme of the painting contest was peace. You had to paint something that reflected peace. And anyway, they did the competition and they brought out this painting, and everyone thought this was the winning painting. The artist drew this beautiful painting, oil on canvas. I don't know if it was oil on canvas, could have been crown on paper. But anyway, this painting came out, and it was this lake. Not Lake Lashinodia. See, you guys always go there when I say the lake. This beautiful, peaceful lake, big mountains, and the sun was setting, and you know that when the water's, and it kind of mirrors, you can see, you don't know which is which, the reflection of the mountains in the nice water, and everyone's like, wow, that is so peaceful. And anyway, the judges said, no, this one didn't win. This one got second. This is the one that won. And it was this painting here. And everyone's like, what? That doesn't look peaceful. That looks like my kids getting ready for school. Water rushing and lightning and thunder and all this kind of stuff. How could that win? Can you see something in the picture? Some of you got great eyes. There's this little there. See there? It's a little birdie. A little birdie. What kind of bird is this, Dave? There's a little bird in there, in the nest. It could have got hit by a rock and it's dead, but I don't think it is. I think it's resting, it's sleeping. And the judges said this is peace. Why is this peace? Because even though the storm is raging around, this little bird is fast asleep. Not a worry in the world. Not a worry in the world. And Jesus says, this is what I give. This is the shalom, the peace that I give. Not to say there won't be this stuff. And we know, and I know in a room this size, people have experienced this. People are experiencing this now. But the key is, how do we experience that amongst all of this? That's real peace. That's the shalom that Jesus is talking about. Look at this passage here, John 16:33. I have said these things to you so that you will have peace in me. He's saying this. This is exactly the painting. In the world you will have distress. There will be waterfalls, there will be lightning, there will be thunder. But guess what? He says, in me you can have peace. We can be like that little bird. I know that sounds a little bit cliche, but it can be. You can experience that. But be encouraged. I've conquered the world. God gives us peace. Look at these famous Philippians passage. Do not be anxious about anything, which is impossible. Why do you think Paul is writing this? Because he knows us. Why do you think the phrase "do not be afraid" is so commonly mentioned? Because he knows us as humans. Right from the beginning in the garden, what did we do once the wholeness was breaking? We hid. We were afraid. And so to do not be anxious is almost like you're asking us to do what is impossible. He knows you're going to be anxious. He knows you're going to have anxiety. He knows you're going to have fears. But then he says, but do this. But in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. Does it mean sometimes that request, he'll take away the lightning or the storms? But this is what he promises. And the peace of God, here it is again. The shalomness, the wholeness from God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Then he goes on and says, focus on things that are pure and right and lovely. And then it says, the God of peace. So not only will you get the peace of God, it says the God of peace will be with you, will journey with you. Third area. This is probably the hardest area. Jesus brings peace with others. We have peace with God. We have peace in self. Now he says, I'll bring peace with others. People are hard to get along with, aren't they? Especially yourself. No, but you have conflict. You have tensions. You have fights. You have people that annoy you. And there's even worse than that. Sometimes there's just stuff where people have hurt you and done stuff to you that they shouldn't have done. And it's wrong and it's bad. But how do we have peace with others? Well, this is what we go back to this diagram. So when we stepped away from God, there was also wholeness and shalom between each other. Yes, between God, so we talk vertically, but also horizontally. That's why we have all the rubbish in this world, is because of this. Sin is the opposite to shalom. Sin causes all these problems, all this tension, all this fighting, all these wars. Neighbors and all that kind of stuff is because of this. All the turmoil. Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. So when we become a Christian, we have peace with God. We have peace with self. And then our responsibility is to have peace with others. We are meant to be shalom makers. That we restore, that we help bring wholeness to other people around us. And that can be really hard. It can be really difficult. But it's part of our responsibility that we would be peacemakers. And that needs to be done in a safe way. Please hear me. If you've suffered at the hands of someone, I'm not saying you go to them and try to be the peacemaker. You need to be wise about that. But in a general sense, we are called to be peacemakers. I remember preaching a sermon on forgiveness, and a family in my previous church really took that and felt like God was convicting them. So much so that after the service, they had this conflict with the lady, the wife had conflict with her dad and hadn't seen her mum and dad for 9 months. And in that period, she'd actually given birth to their second child, a little boy, and they hadn't seen mum and dad for 9 months. And she didn't say what the conflict was, but it was something stupid, something small. It wasn't a math. And it became bigger. Have you ever had those things? And then you say something you regret, and it just became, and they were so pig-headed and stubborn. I don't know who was right or wrong. She didn't say that. But the point is this. On the way home, they said, from hearing that sermon about forgiveness, they just felt convicted, and they pulled into mum and dad's house. And they said, what's the worst that can happen? They can shut the door and tell us to leave. And they prayed about it, and they got up, and they swallowed their pride in some ways. And they went to the front door, knocked on the door. Dad opened the door. What do you think Dad did? He let them in. It's okay. He burst out in tears. He let them in. Saw the grandkids. They spent hours there. what was crazy about this story when she was telling me, he didn't apologize. And she said, that's okay. Because it felt restored. And maybe there'll be a time where he will or whatever. Again, I'm not sure who was right and wrong in it, but it was this being a peacemaker. They went and restored that relationship. I think that's part of what we need to be doing. It's, even in Christmas, we want to be peacemakers. We want to restore those relationships. Peace with others. And the last one is this. So we've got peace with God, we've got peace with ourselves, we've got peace with others, and Jesus brings peace on earth. And this is the one like, well, really? There's so much rubbish going on at the moment. How does Jesus bring peace on earth? The word Advent, what does the word Advent mean? Almost. Coming or arrival. It means the arrival. And so it's the waiting for the arrival. So as Christians, we are in between. We're after the first arrival. And what are we waiting for? The second arrival. Jesus came the first time. And so Advent, we're leading up to the first coming. But as Christians, we live in between the two. The first coming, and there'll be another time where Jesus comes. And actually, sometimes when we read scriptures, we've got to have almost bifocal, as in what the scriptures are saying is happening now, but is also yet to happen. Does that make sense? It's kind of like, yes, peace on earth now, but actually it is yet to happen. Yet, but not yet. And when Jesus returns next time, when Jesus comes back, look at this passage here. It says, it talks about Jesus coming back, and he says this was what will happen. He'll wipe away every tear from their eyes. There'll be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. All the old order of things has passed away. And so ultimately, we're adventing. We're waiting the arrival of the second coming when there'll be full peace. There'll be no more crying, no more weeping, no more fighting, none of that stuff. It just goes. And in the meantime, we are the bearers of peace. If we've been reconciled with God, part of our role is to be bearers of peace. This is Jesus before he ascends into heaven. He's died, he's resurrected, he's talking to his disciples. Peace be with you, shalom be with you, wholeness be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I am sending who? You. So our role, our responsibility is to bring peace on earth. In our neighborhoods, in our families, in our workplaces. We are the bringers of peace. We restore relationships. We are the peace bearers. So we're going to light this last candle. What does a candle do? If you turn off the lights, what does it do? You can see it, can't you? It emanates? No. Illuminates, that's a great word. And so as we go, as this last point, it does. You're killing it today. He's getting double chocolate. Love your work. And so we're the ones, so really, that one's not, I like this one, it's better. We carry this wherever we go. We're Christ bearers. We're peace bringers. We should be looking to restore and bring wholeness into relationships, into environments. That can be in lots of different ways. I was just looking at Phil over there, who works for TIA. The work that he does, he's advocating to bring wholeness in communities. That's being a peace bearer. So however you're doing it in communities, families, that's what we are called to do. And I want to encourage us to do that this Christmas. Let's end by reading this prayer here. I think it's a great prayer. Can we put the prayer up? I don't have control. There it is. St. Francis of Assisi said this. And let's stand together and we'll pray this as we head off. Jesus is the Prince of Peace, the Prince of Wholeness, the Shalom. And he brings peace with God. He brings peace in self. He brings peace with others and into the world. And let's read this prayer. As we endeavor to do that this Christmas, let's read it now. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Divine Master, grant so much seek to be consoled, to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is dying we are born. Amen.